being here. Hope you all enjoyed the morning session and your lunch, and the sessions we were just at. Delighted to have you here. My name is David Scoon, and I'm the moderator for this session titled Collective Action Through Alliances. Now, what does that mean? I asked someone this morning, what does collective action through alliances mean to them? Basically, it's organizations coming together and helping each other, building collaborative relationships, partnerships, whatever you like, in order to improve the operations of all those organizations. It's pretty clear that there's many examples of that, of organizations working together and helping each other. But what's not clear is how do they build those relationships? When do they build them? And whom do they build those relationships with? So to answer those very important questions, we have a panel of 3 experts today who have all built very successful environmental organizations. And I'll be introducing them in just a moment. But what I'd like to say is that I'd love to make this as interactive as possible so that when you have a question or a comment to make, please don't hesitate. So let me begin by introducing our fabulous panelists today. And I'll begin with Catherine Daw. Welcome, Catherine. Thank you for being here.
Rose between 2 thorns.
Catherine is a leader and change agent with a passion to ensure a livable planet now and for future generations. Her beliefs are rooted in the need to build an inclusive community that works together for change to have an immediate and long-lasting impact. She is a co-founder and board chair of the Collingwood Climate Action Team. Thank you for being here. Next, we have Bruce King. Bruce's career with the Ontario government focused on public land and protected area planning. He has held many volunteer positions with the Kolapore Trails and Bruce Trail Conservancy. Today, he is president of the Kolapore Wilderness Trails Association. Last but not least, Andrew McCammon. Andrew has been executive director of the Ontario Headwaters Institute since 2009, guiding it from a focus on headwaters to promoting watershed security, which means healthy and resilient watersheds that protect regional ecological integrity, social well-being, and economic vitality.
And the thorns are what prevent the ungulates from eating the roses.
So please join me in welcoming our panelists and thank you for being here. Now I'd like to ask each of them in turn to provide a brief overview of their organization. Catherine, can you lead us off, please?
Yeah. So Collingwood Climate Action Team, we were founded in 2019 with 8 of us originally. We have a mission statement that says that we work with local communities to reduce climate pollution and to build healthier and resilient ways of living. We have established a vision statement as well, but also values and principles that we operate in. And a big one is not to reinvent the wheel. It's to use existing solutions and also to work with others so that we can do a bigger job together. I always say you can go fast alone, but you can go farther if you go together.
Very good. Bruce, can you give us a quick overview of the organization successes?
So, the Kolapore Wilderness Trails Association manages the volunteers of the association manage a 50-kilometer trail network in the southwest corner of the town of the Blue Mountains. And we manage the trails for cross-country skiing in the winter and hiking and biking in the summer. And we also work at fostering an appreciation of the really significant natural values of the Kolapore uplands. I was asked to just indicate recent successes, and there's lots of wonderful construction projects that I'm sure that we could talk about. But a real, personally important success was our 50th anniversary. We actually made it through 50 years. We started in 73, we set in 23, 24. We celebrated our 50th anniversary, and we had a series of events and presentations and publications, and all of that was about building community. Celebration, but building the community at the same time. And just in terms of a current challenge, as Bruce mentioned this morning, there are proposals for a suite of new protected areas across this part of Great County and Simcoe County, plus others throughout the province. The second biggest proposal in the province is making the public lands in the Kolapore Uplands a conservation reserve. We're very supportive of new protected areas, but there are a whole series of potential implications that we need to try and figure out and comment on and see how that work can mesh with our objectives. So.
Thank you. Andrew?
Thank you very much. The OHI was actually founded in 2003 out of a concern that the Justice O'Connor Commission of Inquiry into Walkerton was only going to address drinking water quality. And so my forebears, if I can use that word, wanted to make sure that water quantity and water for all of nature was also ensconced somehow in provincial policy. And eventually what happened is they kind of migrated to being very interested in watershed management. Now, watershed management was for 60 years delivered by conservation authorities. It was recently removed from their mandate. Nobody's doing watershed management. But watershed management is like a full-year university course. It's extremely complex. And when you do the elevator speech and you see people's eyes glaze over, you kind of get the message. So we had our mandate changed in 2023 to watershed security as defined as David read it. We're the leading organization, the only organization so far in Ontario that pushes watershed security. We don't really care anymore about development. Developers should do their job. They should do a really good job. They should embrace sustainable energy, sustainable building practices, good commuter plans, and complete communities. We just don't want them to foul the water. And we believe that watershed security can be the most important lens and the fundamental lens that would give the development community and architects and planners a greater sense of autonomy and creativity. Just don't foul the water. So that's what we do.
Thank you. Any questions, concerns about what you just heard? Yes.
A question to you, sir. The headwaters you're talking about, I think are really important, and I think it's important that we know they're being properly monitored. And one headwaters that I'm aware of, and I think you must be as well, is the Mad River, Donto Creek, Prairie River, and the West Beaver. All start at the same point in the Walker Quarry, the high point in the Walker Quarry on the south side of that quarry. What I'm really concerned with is the monitoring that's being done by walkers, so they have a vested interest. But we need to have somebody that can look at that and make a point of whether it's okay or isn't. And who's going to do that?
Excellent question. We're a provincial policy organization. I really miss tree planting and picking up garbage in the parks with the kids from the high schools. But we focus on policy. There's just too many areas for us to know about each of these. And mandates gone from headwaters to full watersheds. The question you asked, however, is on monitoring. We've maintained for years in terms of provincial policy that any private monitoring of quarries needs to be considered public domain. Are they doing it? Are they doing it right? What are they seeing when they get the results? It's all a mystery, and there needs to be much more accountability and transparency. That's all I can say.
So can I just comment on that? So I think the thing is that today's session is on collective action. And if I was thinking about it from the question that you've asked, I think it's really important for us to realize that we need collective action on so many of these big issues, and we cannot do it alone. And so it comes back to the fact that this organization's been around for a long time with a certain mandate. They've morphed over the years because they recognize that they need to change where society and where the issues are going. And I think that's really what we're trying to do with this conversation, is to say, these are big questions for us to ask, and how do we get better at working more collectively together, as opposed to saying, what are you doing about it, as opposed to saying, what are we collectively doing?
And I'm looking for a husband.
So that's just my comment on the question.
Before we take more questions, so we don't get too far off track, there will be an opportunity to ask questions later on in the agenda. And I'm pretty rigid about setting the agenda. Tyler's here more times than anybody. So we have to move on right now. That hand is not going down. Thanks, Tyler. So now we're going to enter into the Q&A portion of the session. I'll be asking each of the panelists a question and then asking each of the other panelists to comment on what they have just heard. So, first question.
Excuse me.
Absolutely. So, the first question is for Bruce. And Bruce, we know that there are many different environmental groups operating in the South Georgian Bay, Niagara-Escarpment area. When the ECA was formed about 3.5 years ago, we identified over 50 different environmental groups. But we are always of the opinion that there was strength in numbers, and if we worked together, then we would all more likely be successful. So Bruce, the question for you is, do you think there's a way for environmental and conservation groups to work together for the benefit of all?
I think the answer, the yes answer is fairly obvious on that question. So I'll just talk a
You
bit.
were paid for 2 minutes, so.
Yeah. Very few organizations have all the skills or knowledge or resources to achieve their objectives on their own. So yes, collaboration really is essential, and I frame it as we are involved with a number of partnerships and collaborative initiatives, and I'll just give you a couple of examples. Over the years, we've had multiple partnerships with the Bruce Trail Conservancy. And we've collaborated on bridge construction, and recently the Bruce Trail has volunteered to help share the cost of providing toilets and plowing, snow plowing a parking lot in the winter. We've collaborated with the Collingwood off-road cycling group, which has on trail design and construction, because again they had skills, perspectives that we didn't necessarily have, and they have a summer crew that they could loan to us. Over the years, we've collaborated with a number of groups on providing interpretive walks, fulfilling sort of our educational role. And in fact, last year we collaborated on an Indigenous-led walk, which is written up in the current issue of the Niagara-Escarpment Review, so if you want to read about that, take a look at that. And then there's a challenge that's coming up at the moment that's maybe a little bigger scale. We have a property that is absolutely critical to our trail system. The owner is getting older, and we're concerned about what will happen with that property. It could sever our network. So we were working actually at the moment with the Escarpment Biosphere Conservancy to see if we could maybe make something happen there, because our trail association doesn't have the skills and resources to pursue a conservation initiative, a land trust initiative, but something like the EBC might be able to do something there. And I could cite a bunch of other collaborations, some with government, where the Grey County produced maps and we putting signposts and posted the signs on their property, and we act as eyes on the ground for government agencies where there have been encampments, several encampments. So there's a lot of different things that where we look at drawing in those partners to help us.
Quick question, Bruce. Is it you form these alliances when there's a crisis? Or I think it makes sense to form alliance and collaborate with folks before the crisis comes through.
Well, clarification question. You're talking about alliances. You're talking about partnerships.
Yeah.
Is this the same?
I think it's the same, but
Yeah, I think there's a spectrum there. Alliances I view more on the advocacy end of the environmental spectrum, whereas we're sort of a little more at the operational end of the spectrum, and that's where partnerships sort of work. But yes, for instance, we're having a strategic planning session next weekend. When we've invited some people from a number of different organizations so that they can give us their perspective on our future, as an example.
great. Any comments from the other panelists?
Sure, I'll jump in because we're actually deliberately working on building a network amongst all the climate action teams within the South Georgian Bay region. So there's 6 climate action teams and we're bringing them together deliberately. We've been doing the work for just over a year now, so we're going slow because I want to make sure, we all want to make sure that it's going to be very successful. So it's a very intentional process that we're going through, and we had a generous donation given to the Collingwood Climate Action Team because we are a charity to pay for the work that's being done on that. And you'll see a diagram that looks like a mess over there on the wall that is posted. Go take a look at it later perhaps as you go. But one of the exercises that we did was for each of the groups to identify their core of who they were and what are the connections they have around the community and who in our core group knows them and how are they connected to us. So we all did that so that we could understand that we already have networks, or that we've been networking, but there's a difference between networking and talking to people and networks. And so the intention is we're working on choosing to do an intentional network. We could have chosen to be a support network, and a support network is very different because a support network is there just to help out or to support someone else doing the work. An intentional network is we intentionally do it to do projects together, because as I said, one of our values and our core principles is don't reinvent the wheel, use what existing solutions, and if we are all working on the same solution, and then we have a better chance of being larger and successful as a group, while still maintaining some of our own local autonomy. So I think that is part of what we're trying to talk about today, and whether it's an alliance, whether it's a coalition, or whatever you name it, it has to have some of that structure to it in order for you to all understand what you're trying to do together, as well as what you might want to do on your own. So that exercise was really an eye-opener for all of the 6 groups, and realizing that we actually know more people, and that some of them cross over, that we actually know people together. And it's also about closing those triangles, because I know somebody that you know, and I know you, but you might know somebody that I should know about. So we're trying to close those triangles to get people more connected. So that's my comment on the question at hand.
Thank you.
Sorry to be waiving my statement.
Yes, that's all right, no worries.
Yeah, I think there is a continuum from networking to alliances to much more formal networks. We are a member of about 8 organizations that we network with, that we align with, that we support their efforts. That's the Simcoe County Greenbelt Coalition, the Ontario Greenbelt Alliance, Canadian Coalition for Healthy Waters, which is International Great Lakes Initiative, and others. We've had as many as 1,500 people sign petitions on our behalf to the provincial government. recently we had 16 local organizations sign a submission to Grey Highlands, including 5 or 6 climate action groups on the need for stormwater management master planning in Grey Highlands. And so there's tremendous value to all that. Some of it's busy work. And what you need to do to understand this, it's not just, yeah, I know her, you must be okay. Because that's aligned interests and goals, shared philosophy, shared organizational culture. But you gotta really nail down your aspiration. And so many groups for years have said, we don't do advocacy. Yes, you do. You just don't call it advocacy because you're afraid of the Canada Revenue Agency. Mutual respect, active community. Lots of time goes into maintaining these relationships. But at the end, the most important one is when you start to move forward, do your expectations change? Does it clarify that yours are different from Sally's? There's capacity issues. I only booked onto this for 20 hours this month. You want 20 hours for 4 weeks in a row? How the devil are we going to do that? And that just feeds back to, is this going to work? So, in the continuum of sign a petition to come out and help us plant trees and save the trail, to trying to get a municipality to adopt a stormwater management master plan, there's huge differences. And I think I have 30 more seconds, I hope. One of the things we've done recently is we have established the Ontario Coalition for Watershed Security. We want to attract other organizations with similar interests who agree that land use planning is fragmented and diluted, and that we need a new mechanism to go forward. We've got 6 members on the steering committee. We're trying to recruit more, and what we want to do is set up a series of regional sub-alliances where the chairs, the leader, the captain, whatever you want to call it, they will all talk together and we'll try to influence things regionally and provincially. So collaboration is the key. What you call it is kind of style, just a question of style. But boy, do you ever have to work it. You can't just, oh yeah, she signed on, she'll do whatever I want her to. Oh, wait a minute, I did that on my first marriage, yeah. You gotta work at it to make it succeed.
Thanks, Andrew. Thank you. Catherine, your question. We all know that partnerships can work very well sometimes, and sometimes not so well. So in your opinion, what are the benefits and challenges for environmental groups working together?
I think there's huge benefits because there's power in numbers. You have a collective voice. If you choose to work on something big together, you have a chance of having a greater impact. So I think there's lots of benefits to it. What I really want people to walk away with is it's not a simple task to decide to do this kind of work. So you're hoping that the benefits will outweigh the challenges that you face. And in our case, what we're doing is because we're choosing to do an intentional one, we're actually have a smaller working group that's going to establish the structure and how the organization will fund itself and all of that, because there's this need for us to do our local things, but there's a need for us to come together. So those are the benefits that I see. The challenges are people. We're individuals. We have our own maybe personal agendas, maybe our organization has an agenda that might be different from somebody else that's in the partnership or the network that you're trying to build. And so you have to go slow to go fast. You have to make sure that you've structured it and recognize it's going to change over time. Like what you said today may not be what you're doing a year from now. So you need to be really careful of what you're going to choose to undertake. And in our case, because we've said it's an intentional one, we've been talking about what's the one big project that we could work on from a climate action perspective that's going to have benefit for all 6 of us to engage and work on it collectively together. And you have to pick a lane. And that's the other part, is we can't be all things to all people. So the challenge is to stick in that lane, and if it's not the right one, then we talk about it and we maybe shift to another lane, or we shift that lane to take the curve because we can't see around the next curve. But it's about those kinds of things and keeping it moving in the right direction for everybody is a benefit, but it's also a challenge.
Yes.
We're human.
And knowing when to develop those supportive relationships
Yes.
versus the intentional
Yes,
relationships.
yes, because
Very
supporting
important.
is different. Supporting means I'll sign your petition, I'll write a letter for you, but I'm not engaged in your work, nor are you in mine. And I think for us as a climate action group, and where it sits right now and its importance, that we're facing a crisis, and yes, nature is a really important key part of it. There's this other part that we have to work on, which is how do we live in a sustainable future? And that's where, or how do we live more resiliently in a future that's not going to be like what it has been.
Andrew, we know that all levels of government, municipal, provincial, or federal, as well as organizations like the Niagara Escarpment Commission or Indigenous groups, all have a say in matters affecting the environment. And in your efforts to build your watershed security, I'm sure you've had interaction with a number of these different groups. And the question really is how important is it to build good relationships with these groups and governments? Can you do it on your own, or is it critical to have these good relationships?
Yeah, thank you. I'm gonna base my answer on part of what Catherine said in terms of outcomes. It's very important to understand what you want and what success is going to look like. Currently, I don't think anybody would have any challenge with me suggesting that municipal groups are the most effective. I might know one councillor, you might know two councillors. And those relationships are absolutely fundamental. And surprisingly, because I'm sure everybody has their frustrations with your local municipalities on, I don't know, Talisman or Glenhaven or what have you, you don't get everything you want. But the municipal stuff is easier, it's closer, it's more personal. Since the election of the Ford government, those relationships with the province have disappeared. They don't even do consultation. They put a survey up on a website with inane questions that don't relate to the outcomes. And so it's very difficult. We are the only group in Ontario that is ever deputed to the water directors. That was the directors of water from 7 ministries. And they understood we had transportation, agriculture, natural resources, mines, and we're the only group that ever deputed to that. Consequently, it was shut down. The Water Directors Committee was shut down. We used to communicate with the 7 directors in those ministries on a regular basis. They were not allowed to talk to us anymore. And you can submit till the cows come home, and the Ford government pretty much has its mind made up and does not listen to reason or science. That may sound a little harsh. Sorry. I could back off a little if challenged, but their attitude is we know best, and it's going to get a lot worse today when you get home and read the paper. No, that's not an illusion. That actually is that Bill 60 was tabled in the House today. Oh, you don't? Wow, you're on it.
Yeah.
The relationships are so important, and that's where the benefits come. If you have those relationships, it can sit with there's a couple of councillors here today. We work with them. They get to know us, the ECA, our goals, and those intimacy, for lack of a better word, that's really the wrong word. Comfort level, knowledge level, confidence in that they're trustworthy and truthful. That's where the benefits come.
I think it's a fine line also, I think, Andrew, between when you're trying to build these relationships, that you do it in a collaborative way. And I know there's been situations where people, are publicly attacking those politicians. They should be trying to work more closely with them. So you have to have that in mind, respectful approach to those different groups.
We tend to be far more diplomatic in this country than the blue-red nation south of us. And it's a wonderful feature of Canadian culture, but do not be afraid from supporting or running candidates in the municipal election. In the last cycle 4 years ago, a very concerted collaborative in Guelph replaced 6 of the 12 councillors. Changed the dynamic of Guelph, and they're moving forward on several things. If you don't have that stamina, that ability, that finances, that tenacity, you might as well complain for another 4 years.
Any questions or comments?
Can I just,
Yeah.
can I just take a moment? Did you want to speak as well?
I just wanted 30 seconds, Andrew, I think appropriately flagged the issues at the broader level, political level, and politically guided level, but you can still have some good working relationships at the working level with the provincial staff. So if you're trying to get something done, really try and build up those relationships at that more grassroots level. At least that way you may be able to get intelligence, etc. Even if you can't necessarily get the high order decisions to do that.
I'll just say too that our approach has always been to be respectful but assertive. So how can you be respectfully assertive in your position that may not agree with what they want to do or the direction? We talked about, someone mentioned about CRA and the word advocacy. We use it, but we also say we're the champions for climate action in our community, and therefore we have what you declared a climate crisis. This is what we're asking you to do. It doesn't mean we're always going to agree. We've built really strong relationships with our council deliberately, very deliberately. So we have coffee with 2 or 3 councillors on a regular basis. We cycle through them. We have different people from our board, and our volunteers meet with them. So they all know us, we know them better. It gives them a chance to ask us in private questions that they would never be able to ask in public. So it allows us to also put our position forward. We regularly do deputations, and they ask us to do more. They want to hear from us more because they want it on public record, some of the things that we're trying to promote. And in addition to that, we meet with staff. So we are, able to go and we've built relationships with key staff people, and I think that's really important. And it's not that they're going to close the door to everybody. It's just how you approach them. They don't want to be, you should do this. It's got to be like, we're asking you to do this. You have said this is what you're going to do. How are you going to get there? What can we do to help you get there? It's that collaborative piece that knits it together, and it weaves it so that it's a strong set of cloth that we've got together, because we're all in it together. And their intention of running for council or for a politician, my mother was on municipal government. I know, I lived through it at my teens, listening to my parents talk about it all night long. It's an honor for them to take, we should be proud that people are willing to step up and step into the goo of being a government person on council or even working for a government. We need to say that they're doing a job that is for all of us. So we have the ability to advocate or to say, this is what we want. If they don't know, how are they going to do it for us? So I think that's really a critical element. Sorry,
Thank you, very well said. Thank you. Appreciate those comments. Now is an opportunity for folks from the audience. Any questions, comments? I know back there, gentlemen.
Yeah, alliances, I think it's a really important discussion. One experience I'm walking in the environmental and farming worlds at the same time. And if I look at the biggest struggle of the farming world is this massive wave of investment that's pricing out farmland, driven by a climate change mitigation policy, biofuels, which happens to be a completely artificial, some people say communist policy, where the government defines a mandate and creates an artificial market that happens to be built on flawed accounting. So there's literature out there that even the greenhouse gas benefits are wrong. Now we have a problem. This science is well published in Nature and good journals, but the climate change community doesn't read agricultural focused stuff. So what we would require to eliminate first generation crop-based biofuels like ethanol and sustainable aviation fuels from canola is that the environmental groups would pick that up. But it doesn't happen because we're too much in silos. The only guy who wanted to take that on is Pierre Poilievre as carbon tax 2.0, and a week later he's silenced on it because I'm quite sure that some ag organization shot him into the foot. So we're still stuck with biofuels as a flawed climate policy. How do we build those across discipline alliances? People are scratching their head because the technical details to even understand that there's a problem are so tricky that we can't get the expertise into one head because we're dispersed. How do we do that?
Well, I might be getting a bit ahead of myself on this, but for the last couple of years, the Escarpment Corridor Alliance has invited partners, other environmentally based organizations, to a meeting where we discuss common problems, issues, how we can help each other. And we'll be doing that again. We plan to do it in November. And we want to get as many different groups together to talk about those kind of issues. When we're all in the same room, you know, your description of the problem that you see, maybe someone else can help out in terms of building the alliance so that you're not just on your own. I think working together with others, strength in numbers, would be helpful. So stand by.
So I'm not by myself. I'm part of the Sierra Club policy team in the States. The Canadians don't want to talk with me because I'm pro-regenerative grazing and ruminants. So they're saying, no, if you're pro-cows, we don't talk with you.
Oh.
So there's all those ideological barriers in the heads of people that make those alliances really difficult.
Yeah, so I just a comment on that. I hear what you're saying. I think it's very challenging because it's become a worldwide phenomenon, biofuels. I don't know if it was necessarily, like I've written as a question because I don't know if it was a climate mitigation policy or it's just a way to greenwash.
Yes, it's a greenwash.
So it's a greenwashing thing, and I do think that that's always a challenge. There are organizations for farmers in Canada that are working on regenerative farming. In fact, the new farm, which is over in Duntroon area, has started trying to train farmers and agricultural people on how to do regenerative farming, which includes ruminants and animals as well as vegetables and other elements of it. There's the Farmers for Climate Solutions. So I think the challenge is that again, we have so many organizations trying to put their hands in and doing things, and it becomes quite spaghetti, just like that diagram over there, which is actually a spider diagram, not spaghetti. But I do think that your concern is a very real one. And we face it in terms of what we are even doing with agricultural land here in general. So much as it is possibly moving into development, you know, for land rich, but if you're poor financially, there's all sorts of challenges. So I can't answer your question specifically, because I think it's a complex one. So can we bring it down to a local level? Perhaps, but it also, like there's also all this stuff that's going on worldwide. It's a worldwide phenomenon. That's the only comment I can say about that.
Thank you.
Yes, I have a question, seeing as you brought up the greenwashing word. I know that there's legislation in many countries pushing against greenwashing. I'm interested in any examples of environmental groups or whatever actually using the legal process, which is a little bit beyond being firm, to challenge greenwashing, potentially in the media or in court.
Yeah. So there is actually a law that's being passed federally. It is about anti-greenwashing. So there's already a law in place.
It's federal.
Federal, right. I would say, so it's a difficult one. We're not in that piece of it, but there are people that are taking issues around climate change to court to challenge laws, right? I don't think there is one specifically around greenwashing, but you'll see you saying you're affecting me in my future and taking that stuff to court, for example, to say, oh, so I think that's a different thing. That's not what we've chosen to do. We've chosen to work locally because we think, as somebody's already said, that working locally that's a place that we as individual citizens have a chance to make change happen more than we do. I can find my way now.
It's not easy. You know, you have to have a simple message. You have to have a message that the public would understand. You have to have the marketing channels to get your message out. You have to identify those people with aligned interests. And it sounds to me like you're still at a sorting stage and you're not ready. But you know, we can't solve that issue. But I would like to also comment on this greenwashing thing. It's really far more fundamental than that. There are licensed engineers and ecologists who have written, consulting ecologists who have written reports for things like the mega quarry, for which they should lose their credentials. You know, they're serving an interest, and it's not easy. I'd hate to think anybody interpreted that as suggesting that somebody should lose their income. But we are just not, there's so much misinformation, there's so much slop that's accepted. It gets rubber stamped by bureaucrats who don't know what they're doing or have been told by a deputy minister that this is part of the housing action plan and you have to remove these 18 pieces of land from the greenbelt. You know, that's the kind of stuff that just happens all the time. We need to deal with that even before greenwashing.
I just wondered, how many watersheds does your organization cover?
Well, that's a question. How many fingers do I have? I hate to say it, but again, we concentrate on provincial policy, and I get out to anywhere I can get to and from in a day. You know,
I see.
Up to here, out to Halliburton, down out to the Grand, down to Niagara. So we deal quite well with Peninsula Conservation Authority, Grand River Conservation Authority, Credit. We're dealing up here with Town of Blue Mountains, Collingwood, and Grey Highlands, as well as the two conservation authorities, Halliburton, Simcoe County, all of York Region. Watersheds. So it's at least 7, 8 conservation authorities, which would be like, but do I know that what the watershed report card scores for 30 watersheds? No.
Yeah.
It's just, I'm not full-time.
So each conservation area has several watersheds.
Each conservation authority. Yeah, the Credit happens to be one, the Grand happens to be one, but the TRCA has 7 watersheds plus the waterfront.
I see.
You know, Simcoe County has a number of different watersheds. 19 sub-watersheds.
7
If we can just
in the
get back
Collingwood
and
area.
focus on,
Thank you, sorry for that.
on
Sorry for
collaboration and alliance building. One sec, because I know there's a great friend of mine in the audience who has great deal of experience, not so much in the environmental side, but on the process of collaborating and the importance of collaborating. And Mike Boyd, who was the Deputy Chief of Police in Toronto for a number of years, and then went to Edmonton and was the Chief of Police in Edmonton. And what he has to say, I think, is very important in terms of the process of collaborating, how you can bring together different parties for a successful outcome. Mike, can you give us 2 minutes on?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I think lots of very solid points have been made here by the panel members, but also even in the audience here. And if I could just speak to some of those.
Please.
I currently live in Thornbury. I am, as David said, a retired chief of police, both in Toronto and in Edmonton, Alberta. And I've been involved in using a problem-solving collaborative method known as the Big Five, the Big Five collaboration. And this always helped me and my colleagues understand who to pick your collaborators from the list. Number one, the politicians at the federal, the municipal, the provincial level. The social and government agencies. And I've heard reference, Andrew mentioned a number of them there, and Bruce as well, named the actual departments. You have to go through the list because these are your potential partners. The media, because of the power of communications. I mean, just think about all the forms of communications and the way to get a message out. It's unbelievable these days. The community and all of the people, the groups, the friendships, the networks within the community. As I, in the last 3 years, have watched the ECA, I have always been convinced, as I get updates on the progress of the ECA, how closely connected the work that I was doing with the work that I hear the ECA doing. I am absolutely convinced that model would hold you in good stead by just thinking about that and guiding the picking of various partners. I can tell you, I had many successful large problem-solving or initiatives in my career, but I didn't have success until I started to pick and be guided by the people or the groups that you can pick from. It's like you're just cherry picking without having a bit of a formula. I think that would be quite relevant, but let me talk about 2 different categories here. I'm trying to be quick. There's the building something that is not already built. That kind of an initiative. My best example that I could bring here is on developing Canada's national drug strategy. Not a federal strategy, not the feds, a national strategy led by the federal government, but participated in across the country by each of the provinces and territories. The category of systems that are already set up, like the criminal justice system that's been in this country for 200 years. When I left Toronto and went to Edmonton, Edmonton was a city that had the worst crime problems in Canada. People expect something different from a police chief than they do from a politician. And I felt a responsibility, supported by many, many people in town hall meetings that I met with, who wanted me to take action to change all of that in Edmonton. One of the things that I think is an important point here is where there is a system in place. And Andrew, you mentioned a couple of points. There can be a single point of failure in that system. And if you can identify that and hone in on that, you can then begin to focus and solve that failure. Also, within systems, and I think we can think of examples that the ECA members get talking, there are multiple points of failure. And if you can identify them and then focus in on them, you can bring the right people together to resolve those issues. You can problem solve those issues. Let me tell you, there is a lot of power in the big 5 participants. And I am so very, very impressed with the ECA. I sit back with a smile on my face to see how far you've come in over 3 years. It's incredible. And I come here this morning, and here's an oversold crowd of over 300 people.
Mike,
If you
just to
doubt-
confirm the post office is working, you got my check.
Yeah. All I want to say is, if you doubt the possibilities and the power of people, if you doubt it, when I left Edmonton, and I take very little credit for this, it's the people. Crime was down 50%. That's a lot fewer people victimized by crime. So I'm just saying, it can be done. There is a model. There are some things like points of failure to be identified.
Yeah.
But you'll do it. You've come this far in 3 years. I'll hang around for 2 or 3 more and watch what the progress is.
Thank you, Chief.
David?
Yes.
I just appreciate that, and I'm not being critical of our police for sure. But there's a couple of really big differences in what you're talking about. And I also want to pay tribute to you. I've talked to every ECA staff member over the last 24 hours, saluting the leadership, that they don't even know they're influencing throughout the community. Like, they give these progress reports, they don't even understand how they're lifting the whole community, okay? So I really like the ECA. But what you're talking about is something that has a tremendous amount of resources, which most of us in this room working on environmental things do not have. I'm talking about financial resources. But secondly, I'll just contrast to you, we have had a climate emergency in this country and globally, well known for 20 years. We've had 3 opportunities since the crash of 2008 to build back better. And we couldn't get, people are driving $80,000 and $120,000 cars, and they killed the 2 cents a liter gas tax. You're talking apples and oranges, sir, and I'd ask you to understand that your success isn't necessarily going to easily transfer to the environmental crisis. We've got a climate crisis and a biodiversity crisis. And I haven't even gotten into the water crisis.
But I think the model, I think what Mike was saying, is that by working together with the appropriate
But it's their
people-
budget. We don't have the budget.
No, but we are all here today. We're all collaborating, and that's what we have to do more of. We will do more of it. As I mentioned, in November, we'll be having another meeting with partners, and hopefully we can come up with a way of building some kind of network that will create much more attention and help us all achieve our goals.
You change the subject a bit?
What are we going to talk about?
No,
Go Jays!
So David asked me to say 2 minutes about Georgian Bay forever, and I'm the board chair of Georgian Bay forever. And so I'm going to talk about a process that we both learned in business school, because we went to business school together. And every organization should have a strategic plan. That should be your North Star. In order to get a strategic plan, you need to make sure that you are out to take the opportunities and threats that are facing the mandate of your organization. And I think when you go and you talk to associations, land trusts, alliances, and see what their 4 key strategic priorities are, and try to understand what your 4 key strategic priorities should be, you will build alliances because you will see commonality, and you will say, for example, a couple examples here. The Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority talked about classroom education. Well, we are a charity, And education in the classroom is very important to us. We do something called Fish in the Classroom, where we've actually put brook trout fry in classrooms, and the kids raise them and then they release them. So we coordinate all of the classroom programs for Ottawa Saginaw Valley Authority because we are synergistic in classroom education. I'm going to be just 30 more seconds. Phragmites, huge issue. So we went to the Ontario Invasive Species Centre and we said, this is important to us. They said, this is what's important to us. Can you be, Georgian Bay Forever, the invasive species, the Phragmites Regional Management Center for Eastern Georgian Bay? Yes, we can do that. And that, again, by talking to all of the organizations that are doing Phragmites elimination, we can see the overlaps and we can take care of things. So my brief process comment is, use your strategic plan, your SWOT analysis, your opportunities and threats. Go out there and talk to people and see who are aligned with your thinking and then build on it.
Jarvis, how are we doing for time?
I think we have about 2 minutes. I think we're one of two groups that are just wrapping up.
Okay, great. Please.
Sort of a new question, but what would you suggest? How would you work with a group that had a political agenda, that had a real problem, a real environmental problem to solve, a problem relevant to climate change and health and all that stuff, that they had a strong political agenda, that's the reason for their existence? Would you touch them or not touch them, or can you just speak to your feelings about that? I can be specific.
I alluded to it earlier when I mentioned the CRA. A lot of people think the CRA doesn't allow you to be an advocate. Well, that was changed 2 years ago. There's a lot more leeway right now. But there's a huge difference between political and policy. If your group is political and you're suggesting that so-and-so not be elected or that people vote for Shirley, that's political, we wouldn't touch it. If you wanted to influence policy, a policy change within a government agency, that's fair game. So I don't know what you mean by we are political.
Well,
I'm not asking, it's rhetorical.
So I will answer that too, because we are a charity, and so yes, we come under the CRA issues. And like what Andrew has said, I wouldn't call it advocacy necessarily, we call it championing our position and positioning it that way. But again, we will not be supporting people that are running for political
no, I didn't mean
political
that.
position.
No, I meant for a project that was wrong, that people believe was wrong.
Yeah, we
and
did.
what's CRA? That I thought
Canadian Revenue Agency. So if it's wrong, then we'll stand up for that. I mean, one of our former board members, that is our director of programs, Brian, who's at the back, has stood up and said that their policy is wrong on standards for building new buildings without building them for yesterday's climate, not for today's or tomorrow's. So we'll stand up and say, you need to be establishing policies and how you are scoring developers on putting in proper systems, heat pumps, air source water heaters,
Insulation.
induction stoves, heat pump dryers. There's all sorts of things that they should be doing, and it's actually costs them less. There's a fallacy with developers and with politicians that they believe it's going to cost more, and politicians believe they're going to have to pay incentives to the developers in order for them to get to do that. That's not Jake anymore, because we're now suffering that 20 years of gas furnace still in somebody's home is not going to be replaced for 20 years, and they're still putting climate pollution up into the air. And we have unhealthy homes that are not safe for people to live in because they're breathing gas. So I'm just saying that is where you could be advocating, because I call that advocating and standing up for a policy that they are not, that they should be changing.
Okay, we have time for just 2 more quick questions. Helen?
It's more of a reflection, so I'm a little confused. So at the basis of this what we're talking about is it how to use power and how to organize power. And is there a difference between, it seems to me that at the grassroots level, often there's a precipitating factor that causes people to coalesce around a particular issue, and then it grows from there. If you have already an organization, then you have a baseline in which to work on and reach out for. And I think when you're looking at a grassroots movement, it can be very hard to wait for that precipitating factor, to wait for that coalescence. And the search to find like-minded people in an issue that maybe is somewhat tangential to what your concern is a big barrier. And I wonder if there's suggestions to get around that.
Any thoughts?
I think she should have been up here.
It's hard for me to think about it because I think most organizations, like even ours, started as a grassroots organization. We didn't plan to become what we were initially, right? But over time and recognizing the desire to do more or the need to do more made us become a charity. That we kept saying something has to be done about the climate crisis.
And so
Ours was Walkerton.
Some of them were friends, some of them were not. There were people that I stood up and I said, we're thinking about doing this, do you want to join? And that's how we had 8 people come into the room. And then from there it took off.
Tom, I know you had a question.
Wrap up.
Okay, I'm Tom, currently involved with Save Birds Day, which is fighting a particular project. And I'm curious if you are aware, relative to the greenwashing comments, Andrew, that you were making, and the water testing comments that are back here, are there alliances with organizations that do fact-checking? Because we're fighting a fact-checking battle where there is claims made that cannot possibly be true. And we're having a tough time finding somebody to date that, so we have to hire that, or we've got to find, I mean, there should be an organization somewhere that could ally with all of us, that could help us with that, and I like what you said.
I suggest the only thing you can do is either raise $200K and hire a hydrologist who may never work again, or find a retired hydrologist. Because in addition to the lack of value checking on sloppy work and support projects, if anybody comes out against it, they get blackballed from future contracts with other clients. So you really need to find somebody with a skill set. I don't know if it's chemistry or limnology or hydrology.
Yes,
but
all of those.
You need to find a little expert group to rip them to shreds. Have you talked to the Suzuki Foundation?
Pardon me?
Let's talk after.
I would like to, thank you.
Well, thank you all very much. I think our time has come. So, thank you very much. I certainly achieved my objectives, and that was having an interactive session. Thank you very much. I'd like to also special thank you to our panelists for all the time, effort, their experience, and expertise that they put into this. So thank you.
I'm sensing a lot of interest and passion in this room, so I just wanted to jump in. First off, David, thank you for moderating. Many of you are part of our alliance gathering groups, partners. We have all sorts of words we use, potentially an emerging network. You're going to be getting some emails about some discussions that we want to have on structures and ideas and different formulas. And if you're not on one of those groups, you're an individual person that wants to get involved and has ideas about how there could be more collective action through Alliance, you'll also see opportunities in our newsletters if you follow that. So this conversation can be continued. I think we're probably going to have a Zoom call in November. And one of the things we want to talk about is how do we do more together faster. So stay tuned for that. This is not the end. This was just a little appetizer. Great. Thank you, David. We're going to start the next section in 5 minutes. We're going to start